Hello, and welcome to the program. This is the Black Ponder. I'm Neil Trotter, the host of the show, and today we're going to talk about some political philosophy. Going there again. I always say, in the field of philosophy, not everybody likes to delve into that section, politics. People don't like talking about politics in general, but I think that's kind of a flaw in our activity as human beings, and it leads us to a lot of trouble. So I think it's important to talk about politics, and there's an entire branch in philosophy on politics, political philosophy, and let's get more contemporary about it. Let's not just talk about Aristotle's The Politics, or like Rene Descartes. Well, did he talk about politics? No, but Rousseau, his political discussions, or even like John Locke. Let's get really into the contemporary, and we're going to talk about anarchism. That's what we're talking about, as a political philosophy, and we're going to do that via this book right here. It's called Towards Collective Liberation. It's by Crass, and check out the subtitle here: Anti-Racist Organizing. Anti-Racist, that's a political buzzword. Here's another one: Feminist Praxis and Movement Building Strategy. We're going there, but I assure you, we're gonna keep it in the realm of philosophy. All right. So Crass is a very prominent writer in the field of activist organizing and leftist political thought, anarchism as well. And I recommend this book. From the start, this is a great book. Just get that out of the way. And if you want to know, I've been in a search to look for something that can maybe explain to me, like, what is anarchism? I know lots of anarchists, and I even ask them, like, what is this anarchy all about? And a lot of them can't even give me an answer. But here's a great answer right here. If you want to know about anarchism as a political philosophy, a political way of doing things, check this book out. This will give you the best answer as I have found. So that's pretty cool. So here in the Black Ponder, we like to read quotes from the book. That's what we do. We actually read the book, right? But then we give supplementary commentary, all right? And we give that via the video. We also give that via the comment section below. So feel free to chime in. I'm going to read you this quote. We'll just get started right away. Okay. So if you have this this version of the text, this is actually page 1, the introduction. And if you don't have this book, I actually saw this book for free online. I'll link it below. It's like this website that's sort of like a library, or I guess it is a library. You can actually check the book out for free, and you get like some sort of PDF version of it that you can't download, but you can see it online. It's basically like a library situation. So you can read this book for free if you don't have the physical copy. But I'm using page numbers from the book version, and this is page 1. This is the 3rd paragraph, the 5th line. So this is an introduction written by Chris Dixon, another author. But this is pretty interesting here. Chris Dixon writes, "The personal, quote unquote, and the political cannot be strictly separated. Generally, transformative politics have to be rooted in, but never restricted to, our life experiences." Okay, so that's important because we just talked about that. True politics is not like separate from lived real life or lived experiences. Meaning, like, I don't talk about politics because it has nothing to do with my reality, or like I don't want to go there because I just want to focus on my life. But if you're focusing on your life, and you're focusing on, the things that matter to you in terms of how much power you have in society, and how much in control are you of your life experiences, then you're talking politics. Whether you like to think about it in that way or not, that's really what's going on. Well, now there are kinds of like political actions that are not related to real life experiences. Like when politicians do like their Twitter wars, or I guess they call it this thing X now, or this website, or they're doing all this political drama. That's a lot of that is kind of a distraction. And would that really be classified as politics? I would say no. Politics is just when you're focusing on how much power do I have in my society, or how much power can I assert in my community where I can be the person that I am, right? And interact with other people, right? But I'll continue here. Even relatively privileged people can delve into their lives to learn about how power works in our society, as well as possibilities and challenges for visionary organizing. Right. So we're going to begin there. Right, let's begin there where when we're talking about politics, we're talking about life. We're not talking about something separate from life. We're talking about a fundamental and essential aspect of living. That's politics. Okay. Yeah. So let me ask you this, like the viewer, what is anarchy? Right? Of course, you look in the dictionary, and it's like anarchy is, a rejection of leadership where there's nobody in control and there's chaos everywhere, and that kind of stereotypical shallow understanding of the definition of anarchy. And that is a definition if you're using the word in kind of a simple version of it. But I'm talking about anarchy as in anarchism, like the more like political philosophy, the political ideology. It's not, I wouldn't even go, I guess it can be an ideology, but it's that and many other things. The movement, the activism. Anarchy is actually a form of activism. So what do you think anarchy is? Well, let's see what Crass has to say. This is the second quote I've chosen. It is page 22. The chapter is called A New World in Our Hearts. And this is the third paragraph, the third line. Anarchism for me, however, is not a strict orthodoxy of beliefs. We can draw a lot from the anarchist tradition to help guide us forward, but a good amount of what I think we can learn is from the failures and shortcomings of anarchist politics. I believe in a praxis-based organizing approach. So what is praxis? We're going to get into that. In which we develop our analysis and strategy through a process that combines education, practice, reflection, synthesis, so that our ideas and practices are evolving. So that's a huge part of anarchism. Evolving ideas and practices based off of education, practice, reflection, and synthesis. Right? Huge aspect of anarchism, as opposed to other political philosophies where that may or may not be a priority. Anarchism, that is the priority. Okay, that's the key signifier of anarchism. But I'll continue. Let me skip 4 lines. Far too often, maintaining a correct line of what is and isn't radical leads to political conformity in left activist circles that stifles political and personal growth. It leads to a culture of insecurity and infighting based on proving one's radical credentials. This culture of more radical than thou isn't welcoming, supportive, sustainable, healthy, or successful in achieving our goals. Right, so he's talking about kind of a problem with the left, where unlike the right, which is fairly unified, although recently apparently they just ousted the majority leader of the House of Representatives here in the United States of America. And the House of Representatives is run by Republicans, which is the right, or they hold a lot of right ideological politics. So, I mean, they're doing a lot of infighting too. But the left also, there's a lot of infighting where it's like, oh, you're an anarchist, you're too this, oh, you're a feminist, you're focusing on too much of this and not much of this, I don't want to work with you. Oh, you're an abolitionist, no, I don't want to work with you. Or like, I have problems with this. Oh, you're a neoliberal, so this, and this. Oh, you're a Marxist-Leninist, or you're a Marxist, but you're not a Marxist-Leninist, So there's all these different subgroups within the left, quote unquote. So the left is not a monolith, but it is difficult sometimes to get cohesion in the left. So movement becomes very slow, or maybe even non-existent, because there's a lot of infighting. And so this kind of back and forth of who's the most radical or who's radical in the best way, that is non-productive. I shall continue with the quote. I skip down 7 lines. We need space to acknowledge and learn from the failures, mistakes, and shortcomings of all of our traditions and struggles, to draw lessons and insights, and to help us stay humble and open. In order for us to develop the politics we need, we must also create the culture we need to support us. We need left culture that encourages growth and learning. We need culture that celebrates and nourishes the creativity, beauty, and joy of this world while we struggle against oppression and exploitation. We need culture that builds people up rather than tearing them down. We need culture that reminds us that there are many paths to the goals we seek rather than one right answer. We need culture that nurtures, teaches, and encourages us to win and create the changes in society we need. So I underline, there are many paths to the goals we seek rather than one right answer. It's important. Okay, but let me skip to page 23 here. This is the 3rd paragraph, second to last sentence. There has never been a monolith anarchist theory, tendency, or movement throughout history. There is not one anarchism, but many. Through studying this history, we can draw out its most useful aspects. Okay? So there's a diverse array of anarchism. All right. So from the get-go, we're acknowledging the diversity of constructive political thought. There's not just one right way of thinking about politics. There are many right ways of thinking about politics. But it's often a mistake that we kind of get caught up in our own camps or ideologies or points of views, and we don't really make space for learning and developing and growing and sharing ideas and having that constructive dialogue and that constructive criticism among each other. But this is what anarchy is, right? It's very different from the stereotype or what, the superficial definition of anarchism. Okay, we're on page 24. This is the 2nd paragraph, the 9th line. Socialism will drop from the sky because many have risen up against oppression. Although such uprisings are critically important, socialism develops through the collective choices, actions, and practices of a people over time in the course of struggling for their freedom, dignity, and collective future. So what's going on there, right? So, another political philosophy, socialism, right? Like many of the other ones, like anarchism, it develops through collective choices and actions and practices of people over time, right? It's not just set in stone. This is what socialism is, right? And it will always be this way, right? No, this is what anarchism is, and it will always be this way. No, it develops over time. So socialism will be different as time moves on and as activists continue to implement their ideas and their practices. So this is another important thing to understand about what Crass is talking about. But we will further develop that idea. I skip down to the bottom of page 24. Anarchism is a political tradition, a theoretical framework, and an organizing practice that opposes tyranny in all forms and works to create liberatory social organizations that maximize equality, freedom, and cooperation while minimizing coercion, oppression, and exploitation. Rooted in the anti-capitalist socialist tradition, anarchism developed a critique of illegitimate authority that included the state and patriarchy. So that's about as definitive as you can get. Like, what's anarchism? Just spit that line out. Political tradition, theoretical framework, and organizing practice. Rooted in a rejection of hierarchy or illegitimate hierarchy. And we're going to talk about that too. Like the illegitimate versus legitimate hierarchies. And anti-capitalist socialism, that's another root of anarchism. And then he uses the word authority rather than hierarchy, although, that's mentioned many times. But hierarchy, authority, also using the word the state and patriarchy against those things too, okay? Let me skip down to where we're on page 25, the second paragraph, 9th line. They believed a system of planning and coordination would be necessary, but emphasized the decentralization of power into the hands of everyday people. Okay, we're talking, who are they? The anarchists. They envisioned self-management of the economy through democratic worker associations and self-governance through community associations and popular assemblies. They believed that regions could organize to exchange resources and culture, and that larger scale federations would develop to facilitate communication and cooperation over the world. And I'll skip down to the last paragraph. Anarchists argued that the state has both a material and ideological basis in domination, and reproduces inequality by design, regardless of the intent of those in power. Okay, it's important. So, anarchism recognizes the systemic implementation of oppression, right? Whereas it doesn't so much matter the individuals involved in the oppression. It's systematic. So like good individuals can be coerced to doing bad things because they operate within this negative system. Right. It's another important thing to think about. As the state developed out of the needs of ruling classes to maintain and perpetuate inequality, it is not a system designed for the people of a society to make decisions about their communities and lives. Rather, it serves to advance and enforce the laws and logic of the ruling class. Thus, the anarchists believe that political power must be originated from the bottom up and remain rooted in the people through self-governing institutions. Mm-hmm. So from the bottom up, from the people up, right? So not the top, meaning like the systems, right? Or like, because you could say like, well, you mean the top, you mean the executives, the presidents, the prime ministers, the elected officials. And it's not just that. It's not like these individual people. It's more just the president, the prime minister, the premier, or however you call these ranks of high power. Really, what you're using these names because you're defining these systems, these systems of power, right? So when you start like talking in those terms, you're talking about like you're looking at the top, right? Because you're looking at this higher level, the system level, rather as opposed to like the bottom up, where you're just like, when you the bottom now you're really thinking about the individuals in the community, right? And so that's the focus should be. That's why I mentioned that. It's a focus on communities and individuals rather than like a small class of politicians or people in charge. So we go to page 27, and this is the third paragraph. Anarchists believe that people gain a new understanding of reality through exercising their individual and collective power. Okay? This happens not just because ideas are tested against reality and evolve, but because people begin to see themselves as agents of change who can influence the world around them. So it's not just the natural evolution, like this natural like selection, like this Darwinian type of understanding of ideas. No, because you're participating, like because you are in it and you're actually doing the thing, that in and of itself creates positive change, as opposed to detaching yourself and saying, as we said in the beginning, like, oh, I don't really talk about politics, and now you're detached yourself, and so now you're not involved in the structure of how your society or your community is organized based off of power, right? You have no participation in that. So the structure is not going to change, and when there's only like a few people calling all those shots. The educational experience of putting ideas into practice is therefore prioritized by anarchists, who see the revolutionary potential of fights for incremental change as opportunities for people to build their own power and see themselves as capable of winning large-scale change. Okay, so that's important because, you might ask, like, well, what's the end goal of anarchy, or anarchism? The end goal is allowing individuals to freely decide how they use their power in society, right? So you might say, like, well, what does that mean? It means individuals freely using their power, right? That's what that means. So, and then you'll say, like, what is that? Is that democracy? Is that like communism? Is that like a dictatorship? Like, what is that in terms of a society? Whatever it is, right? The people are deciding for themselves. So I don't want to say like there is no end goal, because there is a goal, but there's no end, right? There's no end. There's no crossing the finish line. It's just this ongoing thing that just continues, right? So that's anarchy, or anarchism. Recognizes like politics is this ongoing thing that has no end to it, right? The socioeconomics is this ongoing pursuit that should constantly be evolving through participation and like growth of ideas. But that's certainly not how politics is today, right? We have a system, it's in place. There's little need to change it, even though we kind of pretend that we change it through like the process of amendments and things that are pseudo changes, right? But are these real changes? I don't think so. Since they believe that the ultimate goal is not to seize and exercise existing power, but to radically redistribute and reorganize it, they insist that the more people experience their own power through struggle and begin incorporating revolutionary values into their daily practice, the more the movement could prefigure the society it is working to build. So people power, right? That's what the anarchism believes in. Give more people power, then the greater chance of a better society. Less people with power, the less chance of a better society. That's the whole idea. And now we're on page 28. This is the last sentence of the third paragraph. Anarchists believe that the revolution is not just a vision of a future society, it is the way that we live our lives, build our families and communities, and celebrate while also struggling for systemic change. So basically that's a much more elegant way of saying what I was just saying. Anarchism aren't just like envisioning this like utopia as like this static thing. Like, okay, utopia, this is what it is. It's like, no, whatever the utopia is, it will be good, but it will be good because more and more people have power, and more and more people are participating in actualizing a society where everybody is free and everybody can be their true selves, right? And then we will gain that utopia. What that utopia is, we'll find out when we get there, right? But there's not this single vision. Anarchists in that way are fighting in the moment, and they're about constant growth, right? That's the vision. Okay, now we're on page 34, and this section is called The Dynamic Challenge of Anarchist Politics for Liberation Movements Today, in case maybe you're following along via an online file and you don't have the page numbers. There you go. But this is the second line of the book, so that's the best I could do there. First, that social change is not about replacing one ruling class for another, but transforming the social relationships of society away from domination towards democracy and equality. To create systemic social change requires mass social movements of people to challenge the current injustice and fight for something better to replace it. People are the driving force of history, and people will voluntarily, through education and organization, make movements that make history. Okay, so that's an important aspect of anarchism. It's this optimism or this hope that people will fight for positive change. They just have to be educated. Like they have to, be enabled through wisdom. That's why education and like sharing of ideas and knowledge growth, these are very important things. So if you give people those tools, they will create a better society for themselves. That's the hope. Whereas, there are many other political philosophies or just philosophies in general that say, well, no, not everybody is capable of, positive change. Some people, you give them, it doesn't matter how much knowledge or information or education you give them, some people just create a negative society, right? Whereas anarchists pretty much reject that notion. It's like, no, the problem is they lack information, or they lack access, or they lack freedom. That's the problem, right? If they have the freedom, the knowledge, the information, they will create positive change, right? And so the point of anarchism is to enable people through education, interdependence, access to resources, and so forth and such. No individual or organization makes a revolution alone. Although it is individuals and organizations that converge to make revolutionary change, anarchists believe that the struggle itself is the greatest teacher. As people put their politics into practice and gain a deeper understanding of their own power to be historical actors. They also argue that the organizations and campaigns we build should actively develop the capacity of working class and oppressed people to reorganize society for the benefit of all and govern themselves. And I'll skip to the next paragraph here. Further, anarchists do not believe that there will be one revolutionary transformation of society that will lead to a classless, stateless, and peaceful coexistence. Right? There's not going to be this turning point, like this singularity, right? Or this vertex. I was thinking, like, what is the point where the parabola turns vertex? They're not going to be one vertex. It's going to be many, right? There may be many revolutions, but these revolutions will contribute to like a gradual change of positive growth. Rather, social change is an ongoing process of evolution marked by periods of revolutionary change that accelerate that evolution. Prefigurative politics challenge us to understand how the methods we use to achieve our goals will influence and shape the ends we achieve. Prefigurative politics. Okay, we're going to talk more about that too. But before we talk about prefigurative change, right? Let's talk about the praxis, which we brought up before. Here we are on page 253, second paragraph, 6th line. This section is called From a Place of Love. Praxis is the process of developing politics through the application of theory to practice, then drawing our lessons from your experience through evaluation and reflection, and then applying those lessons back to both your theory and practice so that they are continually evolving. All right? So that's basically what we're talking about. It's kind of like, okay, you have your ideas and you implement them, right, through your experience, and then you observe, okay, how did my ideas actually manifest through action and experience? What went right, what went wrong? Kind of like what do you call it? Lessons learned. They used to call these things like postmortems, right, in the business world. it's actually quite a common practice, or a well-known thing that's done. It's just we don't really do them often, right? In life, we should, though, right? They're very valuable to do, particularly in politics, right? We really don't do it. We don't really take a step back and be like, oh, what happened? Why did it happen? And what went right? What went wrong? Right? And then after that happens, okay, I need to kind of change my ideas, or like, you're not like stagnant in your ideas. You're always willing to change what you think is right and what you think is wrong, or what should happen and what shouldn't happen, based off of the implementation of your ideas in the real world, right? And this is like, and when you apply that to organizing in politics or community organizing, right? That's known as this thing called praxis. So when we're talking about this kind of gradual change, how does this happen? Right? This gradual growth, this gradual evolution. How does this occur? And it's interesting because, with anarchism, the idea is that people just kind of do things on their own and there's no authority. So everybody's just free reign to do everything as they see fit, right? There's no hierarchical structure. There's even no leaders, right? There's no, people just do what they do. And so is that how change occurs, right? And Crass, the author, pushes back on this notion that of leaderlessness, or like this belief that anarchy is about having no leaders whatsoever. But it's interesting because he doesn't say that there are versions of anarchy, or that there are anarchists who actually believe there should not be leaders. I've actually run into several anarchists myself who would read this and probably reject it and say like, oh no, they just thought this whole notion of leadership is just bad, right? Because it just insinuates power is concentrating power in one person or thing, right? But Crass argues like, well, if we want to have this idea of gradual change, and this idea that organizational techniques and strategies, activist tactics are constantly evolving, we need to have like people who exert their specialties and their expertise, and share that knowledge in a structured way, right? And is that not leadership, right? As opposed to like just willy-nilly, just I can do whatever I want. And it's complicated. It starts getting complicated because like, well, what do you mean? All right, so let me read to you this quote here on page 264. And it is the same section from A Place of Love. It's the last paragraph here. For many of us who were politicized in anti-authoritarian political circles, we have been schooled in the idea that we don't have leaders, quote unquote, and that we don't need them. We have been taught to see leadership as inherently hierarchical, and that in order to resist hierarchy, we need to see our groups as flat and equal with no leaders. There are several limitations to this culture of leaderlessness. First, it makes invisible the leadership that does exist in our organization, and the differences in political experience that are actually a strength and a resource. Second, when we can't talk about leadership, there's less space for us to talk about real power differences in our organizations. For example, in male-dominated groups, we've had the experience of men using the pretext of we are all equal here to avoid being confronted about sexism. Third, if we aren't willing to recognize leadership where it exists in positive ways in our organizations and movements, then we are not able to develop a practice of leadership development that supports more people to build their skills and capacity to contribute meaningfully to political struggles. And so that kind of acknowledgement of like, okay, they're leaders, right? But the leaders are about sharing power, and how is power shared? It's shared through like sharing expertise and sharing knowledge and sharing wisdom. And knowledge is power, right? So when you share that and you enable more people, but that kind of sharing is a form of teaching, right? And teaching can be a kind of leadership, right? And there's a whole discipline in that form of organizing, and as Crass says, leadership is part of organizing. So it's interesting because in Crass' point of view, and I would actually agree, constructive anarchy is not a rejection of leadership, right? It's about what's legitimate leaders and what's illegitimate leaders, right? If the leader is sharing power and distributing power and to as many people as necessary to construct a community focused society, then that's good, right? But when the leader is just hoarding power, that's bad. So it's not so much about the necessarily who's in charge or who is the one that's calling the shots. It's more about, okay, who has power and who doesn't have power, right? And is power being shared or is power being hoarded, right? And so it's more complicated than, power is being hoarded when there are people that are in charge. Well, it's more complicated than that, right? Maybe certain people are in charge one time and then it just shifts to other people being in charge at other times. Or maybe multiple people are in charge of different things at different aspects of the organizational transition and the activist strategy, right? So in that way, anarchism is more complex. And it's not as superficial. It's we reject all forms of leadership. Okay, so let me go to page 281. This is the section We Can Do This. And this is the second paragraph here. Often in our work, we need to shift away from dichotomous either or thinking and practice a both and framework. Rather than entirely right or wrong, reality is thankfully more complex. We need to practice both and thinking as a way to break out of fear of making mistakes, of thinking that we can wait until the perfect movement, the perfect organization, the perfect strategy emerges, and then boom, we jump on and away we go. No. We need to build up organizations, campaigns, and struggles in far from ideal circumstances, find the assets and opportunity in the conditions we face, and leverage our collective resources and power to fulfill our goals. Both and thinking can help us experiment and create hybrids and that take the best from different traditions and practices. Yeah, so I think the key here was not waiting for ideal circumstances. You gotta struggle into it. You can't avoid complex situations because life is complex, and there needs to be some philosophy of inclusion. Okay, we can make this work even though these aren't ideal circumstances if we hold true to what we believe and you see common ground in shared goals. For example, yes, I believe in bottom-up democratic power sharing in some situations. I believe consensus-based decision-making and collective struggles with empowered leadership and sharing of roles and responsibilities are highly effective. And I also believe in libertarian hierarchies with clear roles and expectations, differentiated decision-making power, supervision, and channels for communication and mutual accountability to both goals and values of the organization. So it's not a complete rejection of hierarchy, but this is not like a aha gotcha moment. No, I hate that type of shit, to be honest with you. Ha, gotcha. No, it's that's great. He's acknowledging, I understand, the situation is complex. Sometimes hierarchies of certain kinds are necessary or, are valid, right? But a lot of times hierarchies are invalid and illegitimate, right? But not always, right? So how do we filter the legitimate from the illegitimate? And so he's getting into the philosophy of like, this is how we determine what's legitimate and what's illegitimate, right? It's the philosophy. It's not like the current state. You know, I got a lot of respect for this kind of thinking. Let me skip down 2 lines. Authoritarian hierarchy assumes that power imbalances are permanent, natural, and those higher in the hierarchy are better in every sense of the word than those lower in the hierarchy. Liberatory hierarchies are based in the belief that all people have the capacity to lead, that good leaders are also followers, that people playing many different roles are making important contributions, that delegation of specific roles can make space for more people to participate, that opportunities should be available for people throughout the organization to grow politically and personally, with the goal of creating more leaders, not just for the current organization, but for the larger movement as a whole, i.e., creating study groups for volunteers, connecting interns to mentors, creating roles for people with less availability to make important contributions but not be in long meetings, sending data entry volunteers to political events, and skills development workshops, and so on. You know, great examples. Often, our discussions either assume that horizontal is good and hierarchy is bad, or that horizontal is ineffective and hierarchical is effective. Both and thinking can help us look at what the strengths and weaknesses of both are and experiment with what works best to achieve our overall goals. I'm definitely for this kind of thinking, this acceptance of the complexity, and like you can't just be simple like, oh, you know, I don't believe in hierarchy, period, point blank. It's like, well, okay, so what about in this situation or in this situation? Like, or like, you know, sometimes you do have to just go full, point blank, full like, this ain't acceptable, right? I get that too. So there's a place for that too. But oftentimes that's not the case, right? And so it's more like it's focusing on the principles of the philosophy, you know, or the philosophy itself, or constructing principles based off of the philosophy. All right. See, I told you, like, we're talking about philosophy here, rather than just letting principles dictate everything. It's like, well, wait a minute, let's look at the principles. Are they in line with what we want, which is the sharing of power, or like the building up of people, the evolution of growth of people to manifest themselves as their true selves, right? Okay, this is page 282, second paragraph. I just skipped one sentence. Activists routinely reject organizations and campaigns on the grounds that they are politically problematic. Often these are large-scale mass organizations and campaigns. An either-or framework leads activists to think that an organization is either has good politics or it doesn't. That it is either doing things right or it isn't. But reality is far more complicated. Yeah, it is. All of our organizations, campaigns, and efforts have limitations, are problematic in some ways and positive in other ways. Generally, the larger an organization or campaign is, the larger the problems are, as well as the positives. A both and framework encourages activists to look at it from multiple perspectives. What are the shortcomings? What are the strengths? Are there things about this organization campaign that are unique and significant towards accomplishing our larger goals? Are there opportunities to help build this organization/campaign in ways that will accomplish short-term goals and put us in a better position to achieve medium and long-term goals? If this organization campaign ceased to exist, would it be a blow to the movement or not? While we can agree that there are many ways this organization or campaign could have done things better from the beginning, if we agree that it is also doing important work, what can we have influence over now? And how can we help make the effort as successful as possible and overcome as many challenges as possible? Okay. What are these? I asked a lot of questions. What are these questions? These are, I would argue, they're political, philosophical questions, right? And that's why I always preach like philosophy is very important in all aspects of life, and we underutilize philosophy often. you got to be asking these kinds of questions to do effective things like community organizing, or like, what is this? Going towards collective liberation. Well, let me continue here. This isn't a suggestion to abandon strategic thinking and just put our energies into anything doing positive work, right? He's not saying that. It's more complex than that, is what he's saying. He's not saying like, oh, just abandon, if you just see anybody doing good things and just abandon your morals or principles. No, he's not talking in those simple terms, right? Because some people will see it like that, but that's not what's going on here. Rather, it is encouragement to evaluate efforts in a complex way and look beyond quick judgment and dismissal of the vast majority of efforts around us as not measuring up. We want to devote our energies to the efforts we believe will do the most to help us achieve our goals. Using a both and framework can help us think through our own work. And it can also help us evaluate and relate to the work that many others are doing as well. This is a framework that can help us break out of the insular radical ghetto and inspire us to join with others to build movement to achieve radical change. Because that often is what happens. You working with lots of groups and you're like, oh man, that one thing that they're doing, I can't get down with that, so I'm out. And then as you join another group, that's another thing, I just can't do it, I'm out. And it's like you keep doing that and you look around, you're like, wow, I'm by myself here, right? As opposed to, and he's not saying like, this group over here sacrifices children to goats, so you should work. No, he's not. So you should work with it. I mean, if you see something like that, then you need to bounce, right? He ain't saying that. He's like saying, well, look at it. Like, are they, really deeply consider like what groups are doing? Can you come up with a compromise? Weigh the pros and the cons. Recognize that you also don't have all the right answers. And just see if you can make it work or not. Like, alliances are very important. Both and thinking can help us look at the world around us in a more expansive way. Rather than feeling like we're constantly trying to fit the complex world into the one right way, or a static list of do's and don'ts, we can use our principles and analysis to help navigate the world, allowing space for our principles and analysis to become more dynamic and nuance through practice. This is often referred to as getting our hands dirty in the real world. It is important to remember that dirt is where we plant seeds for food that nourishes us, forests that sustain us, and gardens that bring beauty to our lives. So he's using that metaphor. Right? Got to get your hands dirty. You can't stay clean. And it's basically like, so I'm done reading my quotes from this book. Great book. Check it out. But in conclusion, what is anarchism? Anarchism is about not putting so much faith in power, right? And power is not concentrated in any one person or group of people, and it's also not concentrated in any one idea, ideology, or philosophy, right? That's another thing. Anarchist is like, okay, I have these principles, the rejection of authoritarian hierarchy. And what is authoritarian hierarchy? We already talked about that. It's basically illegitimate power, power that's just being hoarded, right? But liberatory hierarchy, where the focus is diluting power to the most people possible, that's fine. But what does that mean in practice? Well, we don't know, right? You have to be dynamic in that. You have to be fluid and be like, okay, I have this idea, like we got to dilute the power as much as possible, but I live in this complex world. I live in a complex world where that way of, to reach that goal, I'm gonna have to navigate through a lot of problematic stuff, right? So I might have to make alliances that are complicated and aren't specifically like 100% aligned, like the puzzle pieces don't precisely fit, but they somewhat fit, right, to get to that goal. Now, you don't want to like have a puzzle piece that doesn't fit exactly, then it's like, okay, I can't make this work. But if you can make it fit like a little bit, right, then maybe we can like work together, and the puzzle piece we can mold our puzzle pieces, and we can make them fit more precisely, or and this is doing the dirty work, right? This is doing the dirty work. But through that dirt, that's where you grow. That's where growth happens. So an anarchist doesn't believe in pristine ideas, right? An anarchist is about getting dirty, getting down and dirty, and diluting that power to grow and enhance all individuals. But even that's not the full definition of anarchy, because there is no full definition of anarchism. Anarchism, anarchy, different suffixes or suffices. I don't know the plural of that. In any case, check this book out, Towards Collective Liberation. Yep, that was correct. By Crass. Great book. And I'd encourage you to check out more political philosophy, because political philosophy often gets a bad rap. People who are into philosophy and say like, oh, I don't do that. I think that's a little derivative. Philosophy is pure, right? But it's a very important aspect of life, politics, and I think if we apply philosophy to that very important aspect of life, we'd be in a much better place as a society. That's just me, though. What about you? Comment below. Well, you've been watching The Black Ponder. Tune in next time for more philosophical thought.